What is going on, beautiful people? It's your man Louie T here on a Wednesday afternoon. It's nasty outside. Um, Not that cold, but it's wet, man. Just wet. Anyway, today's gonna be a short, abbreviated podcast. Got a lot of stuff going on, man. Crazy, crazy days right now, but we're gonna jump into some things today. A lot of interesting topics to get to. I want to hear from you guys. So we'll talk about week 16 a little bit. We won't go through the whole slate of games, but we will talk about how things have gotten very interesting. Things have gotten a little complicated, just a little complicated after week 16's happenings. So we'll talk about all of that and then some here on the 384th installment of the Louie T Network podcast that starts now. The Louie T Network is powered by MusicHead University. MusicHeads, classes in session. Turn me up. Enroll on YouTube now. Link is in the description. Who else could it be but me, your man, Louie T? Welcome to the 384th installment of the Louie T Network podcast. Of course, I'm your set man, Louie T. Thank you for joining me. My Grizzlies are 4-0. All right, so but basketball is fun again. I knew it was going to take these 25 games to get them out of the way without Ja to really truly enjoy the game again. Losing sucks, and the team was fighting, but some good things did come out of that stretch without Ja. I'll explain that at a later date and time. Don't have a lot of time on my hands today, so I won't waste your time with that. Won't bore you with that today. A lot of quarterbacks got benched today. This kind of felt like Black Friday for quarterbacks. So we're going to start the show with that. And let's get into the gem dropping session, shall we? I think we shall. Let me drop this gem on your melon. Open your mind, let your conscience be free. You're now rolling with your man, Louie T double E. Let me open you up. Get you thinking a little bit. So last week, we saw Desmond Ridder get benched. This week, we saw 3 more quarterbacks get sacked. And, 2 of them, not that surprising after the way things had transpired and the expectations for those quarterbacks because of where they were drafted or not drafted in the case of Tommy DeVito. Meanwhile, Russell Wilson being benched is eye-opening, to say the least. We kind of knew that there wasn't synergy between he and Sean Payton, and I always felt like he didn't fit a Sean Payton quarterback's DNA profile, but we'll get into that here in a second. But I just want to say this. Remember all of the scuttlebutt and that conversation surrounding the 2022 NFL draft class crop of quarterbacks and how bad it was. We said it was bad, and just to refresh your memory about that class, it was Kenny Pickett, who was the only first round quarterback taken. There were no second rounders in that draft. In the third round, it was Desmond Ridder. It was Matt Corral, and it was Malik Willis. I think Bailey Zappi went in the 4th round, and then Sam Howell went in the 5th round, et cetera, et cetera. Those were the main ones, right? To this point, Pickett has been mid at best. Honestly, he hasn't been very good. And if he were a 5th round pick, people would be calling for his benching, but he's a 1st round pick, so he keeps getting opportunities. Malik Willis isn't any good. They've already bypassed him for Will Levis in Tennessee. Matt Corral may never see an NFL field again in a starting capacity. His tenure in Carolina couldn't have gone any worse. Desmond Ridder was benched in favor of Taylor Heineke not once but twice this season, and he's not getting his job back now. And Sam Howell officially benched after being benched in game the last 2 weeks, officially benched in favor of Jacoby Brissett today. So we'll start with Sam Howell and his benching in Washington and the catastrophe that has taken place prior to his benching has led up to this event here. But there were a series of events that were done starting in the offseason with the negligence along the offensive line and the personnel that was brought in here that kind of set the foundation for what we're seeing now. And you go to, the plan that was put in place by Eric Bieniemy, which was a faulty one that didn't include, again, remember, coming into the season, Sam Howell had one career start, and it was playing in his second straight different offense in as many years in the league. So there was no continuity whatsoever for Sam. All right. Everything was different. He was essentially a rookie quarterback starting this year. And Eric Bieniemy threw him in the fire like he was a 7-8 year vet. It was actually disturbing to watch. But that's nor here nor there. He got sacked a bunch. That didn't help. Some of that was his own doing. A lot of it was the offensive line just not being very good. And then they refused to run the football, even though they were having some success, refused to run the football. There was no play action fake really to speak of because the run game wasn't really there. They refused to get under center, right? Very, very few under center snaps, few play action fake under center opportunities. The quick game, which is what we were promised when they came here with this supposed to be a version of the West Coast offense. And when you watch the Chiefs, it's quick game galore in Kansas City, right? Like Mahomes drops back and it's 3 steps and the ball's out a lot of times. And we thought that's what we were getting here. And it wasn't even close, remotely close to that here in Washington, right? Then we were promised that these guys like Antonio Gibson and Curtis Samuel will be used as chess pieces. Man, these guys have so many skill sets that we can utilize. And so we thought that it would look something like Kadarius Toney or it looked something like Mecole Hardman in Kansas City. Far from it, right? At a bare minimum, we thought Antonio Gibson would look something like Jerick McKinnon here in this offense. Not even remotely close. And so a lot of things were set up against Sam and him having success. And despite that, he fought for 10 weeks, played actually good football, put himself in a conversation and be here again next year as the starter. And then things unraveled here the last 5 weeks. He's been spiraling. I mean, nosedive spiraling out of control in terms of his play. The poise that he once showed in the pocket, gone, doesn't look like it's coming back this year. He's not confident in what he's seeing. He's seeing ghosts. He's running out of the pocket even when it's intact. The interception totals have just been mind-boggling. And even when it's not his fault, it's still his fault. And so it felt inevitable, right, that something like this would occur with him. But it just makes it that much worse and harder to swallow when you look at the staff and how incompetent they've been this season. And they're sort of using him as a scapegoat here at the very end, even though they're not blaming anything on him necessarily. But that's what it looks like. And you're trying to win at the end of a season that's lost. What are we doing here? Just let the young fella finish out the season and be done with it. Like, what are we doing here? But that's nor here nor there. Sam's time in Washington as the starter is done because the next group that comes in here is going to draft a first-round quarterback, and that guy more than likely is going to start the season out next year. And so Sam's opportunity to be the unquestioned starter in Washington is over. And I'd be lying to you if I didn't tell you it was a sad state of affairs how this thing has played out, because he's shown more promise in Washington than any quarterback since Robert Griffin III. And we absolutely failed this kid on so many levels. Disappointing to say the least. You go to Tommy DeVito, and look, it was a nice story. Similar to Josh Dobbs. This one doesn't have as much to it, right? He got in there in a lost season, and he did this shit here, right? Scored a couple of touchdowns with his legs, threw a couple with his arm, beat up on some bad teams. The one game he did play that stood out was the Green Bay game. I thought he played his ass off in that game, and I knew he would, coming off of a bye Everybody was putting Green Bay up on a pedestal because they had won, 3 straight, I believe it had been, and then they beat Kansas City on a Sunday night the week before. And so now I said this is the perfect stage for Green Bay because they're a young team, and this is what young teams do. They have a major letdown. And the Giants had won 2 in a row. They were coming off their bye week. They were feeling good. They had an extra week to prepare for the Green Bay Packers, and I thought they'd play well, and they did. And so I wasn't shocked that Tommy DeVito played well. I was shocked at the response, as if he was going out here and just murdering teams. Like, he looked like a starting quarterback. And I was like, he played okay, but I thought it was a well drawn up and devised plan to get him into situations that he was comfortable with, using his legs, making him a threat as a runner, and that would open up some opportunities for him to throw the football. And he did it well, especially on that final drive. They won the game, and all of a sudden the shit took off. His agent looks like he's straight out of central casting of some Italian show. And so it all blows up, and, he's all over the place, just like Josh Dobbs. And I'm like, yeah, but he's still Joshua Dobbs. Like, this isn't going to end well. And I'm looking at Tommy DeVito, and it was funny because all of a sudden now people want to bring up, well, Washington offered Tommy DeVito an opportunity and he and more money, and he turned them down to go to the Giants. And I'm like, who gives a shit? It's Tommy DeVito. I don't want Tommy DeVito on my team. You can have him. Why are we even talking about this? I don't give a shit that Washington offered him money or more than the Giants. He wanted to stay at home. Good for him. I'm glad he and his parents and his agent got their 15 minutes of fame, but the shit's up. Went to New Orleans, didn't play well, got embarrassed, got beat up, got knocked out of the game, came back, didn't do anything, played against the Eagles last week, was asked for a half of football before being benched. Tyrod Taylor comes in and almost salvages the victory and gives them a chance. So he's now officially benched in New York. He was never supposed to be in the game in the first place. This is not a big deal, but he is benched. So we'll throw him in the conversation for the sake of throwing Tommy DeVito in the conversation. Hey, Tommy, go back to the bench. This is the one that knocks everyone's socks off. But if you've been paying attention, then you knew this was a possibility. First of all, Russell Wilson to the Broncos may go down as one of the worst trades in NFL history when it's all said and done. Well, we need to keep an eye on this because I don't know all of the compensation that was involved, but I know they gave up a hell of a lot to get Russell Wilson. And what's crazy is going back and looking at that situation when it all unfolded and how many teams were interested and how the Eagles were interested, and Russ chose Denver over Philadelphia. Could you imagine if he would have chosen the Eagles? How crazy it would have been. First of all, they would have never gone to the Super Bowl last year. They'd be a joke right now, and everything would be different. Everything would be different in Philadelphia had they chosen, or had he chosen Philadelphia instead of Denver. And who's to say he might have played better in Philadelphia, but he might have done the same thing he's doing right now and just not playing well. Now, I think the offensive minds in Philadelphia would have gotten more out of his talents than, because I think they're trying to fit a square peg into a round hole. I think they're trying to ask Russ to be something that he's not, to conform to their scheme instead of saying, hey, this is what Russ does best. Let's do that instead, right? But that's no here nor there. The bottom line is he's been bad in Denver. And last year he was awful, to the point where I felt the need to defend this man. The respect had gotten to an all-time, the disrespect had gotten to an all-time high, but this year he was better. The numbers are better. When you watch, it's not significantly better. When you watch it, the numbers say something, but the performance on the field says something. And the offense is still terrible. It's still hard to watch. Even, the 1-5 start to me offensively is what they are. The 6-3 that they've been since then is, to me, indicative of what the defense was able to provide them, right? The offense hasn't gotten that much better. They've just gotten more opportunities closer to the end zone due to this defense creating turnovers. Instead of this anemic offense having to drive the length of the field, which they're almost incapable of doing without making some sort of a mistake, they've had to go 23 yards, 6 yards, 5 yards, 18 yards, 29 yards for a touchdown. And that's helped them dramatically. But they're still ass on offense when you watch them. They're still disjointed. Russ still doesn't seem to have a great feel for what Sean Payton is looking for. He's still holding on to the ball way too long, but that's always been a Russell Wilson thing. Bottom line is, they had no business losing to the Patriots. And that felt like the final straw for Sean Payton. You could tell visibly he was frustrated on the sidelines. And he's going to go want to find his quarterback next year. And we blazed them with Sam earlier. Maybe Sam is a Drew Brees clone. He grew up idolizing Drew Brees. Maybe he comes and rescues Sam this offseason. Gives Washington a 6th-round conditional pick that could turn into a 5 if he takes X amount of snaps, plays X amount of snaps, and performs well, whatever the case may be. We'll see. But the Broncos will be in the hunt for a quarterback. And there'll be plenty of them in the draft. They don't have to trade for a guy like Sam Howell. There'll be Bo Nixes and guys like that available when they draft and they select. And so if they want a quarterback, they want to get out of the Russell Wilson business, they will be in a position to do so. The benching is weird with 2 weeks left, but the insiders and the guys that cover the league that get the information for us did a great job of laying out why this benching was important. So he's done in Denver. This benching signifies, it's the same thing the Raiders did with Derek Carr, if you recall last year, right? Where they benched Derek Carr to make sure that he wasn't hurt, because they would be on the hook for X amount of millions of dollars if he gets injured and can't pass a physical. So then the injury clause kicks in, and now you'd be on the hook essentially for money that wasn't guaranteed. You'd be on the hook for that money as guaranteed money, because there are injury guarantees in the contract. So for Russell Wilson, there'll be a cap hit next year if they were to part ways with him. But as long as he can pass a physical, they won't be on the hook for the 2025 money. If he gets injured in these final 2 games and they decide to cut him so they don't have to pay all of that 2024 money, just the dead cap money, right? If he can't pass a physical at that time because he gets injured in these final 2 games, then they'd be on the hook for the 2025 money. That injury settlement would kick in, and they'd be on the hook for that 2025 guarantee money as well. So instead of risking that, you bench him. He's perfectly healthy. You cut him after this season. You turn him loose. You probably shop him around and see if you can get something for him. Nobody's trading for Russell Wilson at this point. So once you realize you're not getting anything for him, you cut him loose before any of those extra guarantees kick in, those, roster bonuses where if you're on the roster by this time, you get this amount of money. They're going to cut him before all of that stuff. I'm assuming probably before the start of the new league year, they'll probably have to cut him. I don't know if some incentives or some sort of bonuses, roster bonuses start to kick in at that point, but they're going to release him. And what a whiff that trade was. They gave up players, good ones at that. They gave up draft picks, a bunch of them, 2 first-rounders in particular. I think they gave up a second and maybe something else. And they did all of that and paid him. That's the part that makes this thing probably the worst trade in NFL history, is then after giving up all that stuff, they then paid him a crazy contract, and he's only going to play 2 years in Denver. 2 years. You know what else is going to look crazy if it doesn't work out? They traded for Sean Payton too. Like, the Broncos did everything wrong. They swung for the fences, but boy, did they miss. They swung hard, but they whiffed. And so he's benched. Sam Howell is benched. Tommy DeVito is benched. And things look a lot different this week at the quarterback position around the league. So interesting times in the NFL. 3 different quarterbacks benched for 3 different reasons. For Washington, I really don't know what the hell's going on there. But good thing is all of this will be over in a matter of 10 days. Okay. 10 days from now, we won't be having these conversations about guys that aren't here anymore. We'll be saying sayonara and getting rid of these clowns and starting the process of trying to rebuild what was once a storied franchise, right? For Tommy DeVito, it was a cool story, but the Giants are trying to win. Unlike Washington, who shouldn't want any part of winning, the Giants are trying to win. They're trying to create a culture there because their head coach is going to be there next year, and a lot of those players are going to be there next year, and they're trying to go out and still win some football games. And so nothing wrong with what they're doing. Tyrod gives them the best. I thought Tyrod, as soon as he was healthy, was going to be given the starting job, but they stuck with DeVito, and it worked for a little while. But Tyrod gives them the best chance to win, and that's what they're going to do. And as for Russell Wilson, this is strictly about money. We're going to cut you at the end of the season. You're done in Denver. We don't want you hurt in these final 2 games. We don't want to have to pay you in 2025. You got to get the hell out of here. You ain't got to go home. You just got to get the hell out of here. Yikes. Sean Payton is making a statement. They're going to start Jarrett Stidham in week number 17 are the Denver Broncos. Wow. 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 Let's move on to social media maneuvers. I'm a midday marauder. Y'all know how I get down. So we will get to the comment section and see what you guys have to say. And you guys know the drill. If you don't, it's pretty simple. Use the hashtag LouieTLive to have your comment read on the air if it's pertinent. If you want to jump straight to the front of the line, super chats are the way to do that. Remember, we are pressed for time, so not going to get to a ton of your hashtags today. So super chats are going to be the way that you're going to have an opportunity to have your voice heard for the most part today. So we'll get to the supers. If we have time, we'll get to some of the comments that you guys have today. But we will start with Spicy Kicks Hawaii. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB, who writes, "Aloha, Lou. Aloha. And happy holidays to you and the fam. Likewise, Spicy Kicks. Likewise. I think I may be the only one who wants a win versus Dallas. I need to go to the nearest sink. Yeah, and wash your face. Yeah, go ahead and do it. You know the rest. I don't have to tell you. You're a smart man. And I get wanting to beat Dallas and all of that good. Like last year, we were kind of on the fence. A lot of us wanted to lose that game. But once Sam got the start and the ball was kicked off, everything changed. I'm telling you right now, nothing's going to change for me. Whether Sam or Jacoby is in the lineup, I don't want to beat Dallas. I have no interest. We already beat, Dak Prescott last year, broke that streak that was going on. I'd love to beat Dak, but at this point, I have no interest in beating Dallas. I'm looking at the bigger picture now, and I have to be smart about this. Sometimes as a fan, you're irrational because as a fan, you want to win right now. And sometimes you can get caught up in the moment and lose sight of the bigger picture. There's no losing sight of the bigger picture. This is the biggest offseason in franchise history, arguably, after last year, of course. Last offseason was the biggest because you were getting rid of Dan Snyder, and there's no bigger offseason than that. But this is the second biggest offseason in franchise history. And I'm not being a prisoner of the moment. We haven't had a real front office setup in a quarter of a century. This is the first time we'll have it. We've got new ownership. This is a chance to revitalize this organization. It starts at the top with whomever they hire as GM. We'll see what kind of structure they go with, whether there's a team president residing over that GM or not. But whatever the case may be, that GM is going to be the most important hire of the offseason. You then go from there. You hire the head coach. That head coach fills out his staff. And then you got to go finding the pieces that are going to give this coach the best chance and these coaches the best chance to coach up a winner on the field. And it starts with the quarterback position. After you get all of the front office stuff situated, when you get to the field, the quarterback position is the most important one. We don't have one currently after how they destroyed Sam Howell. You can't beat Dallas. Under no circumstances can you win any of the last 2 games. And as much as that sucks because you always want to beat Dallas, we got to be smart about this. Go to the nearest sink. Don't touch that left faucet. You got to turn that right one all the way up. Let it run for a little while. Stick both palms under there. You know what to do. I don't have to tell you. You're a smart man. You're a smart guy. John Perez, my guy. JP, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Who writes, "Good to see you as always, Lou." Likewise, JP. Hope you enjoyed your Christmas. I did. I hope you can say the same. That was the first as a married man. I hope you guys had a great time. Maybe you spent time with each of each other's families, or maybe you blended the two families together, whatever the case may be. Hope you and your beautiful wife had a great first Christmas together as a husband and wife. He says, I think it's time to have a real conversation about Caleb Williams being in play for Washington via trade up to one if we wind up picking second or third. We'll have plenty of time. We got to see how this goes first. I mean, it doesn't really matter. We're not going to fall anywhere further down than fourth. We've pretty much locked that up, as long as we don't win, of course, which I can't see us doing. But that Dallas game in week 18 does have me a little nervous, because Dallas, having lost to the Dolphins, it probably was in our best interest that they beat the Dolphins so that they would need that week 18 game and have something to play for, as long as they don't lose again. And I don't think they're going to lose to Detroit, but anything could happen. They may need week 18, same situation as last year, where if Philadelphia loses and they win, they could still steal the division. Hopefully that's the case, because I really don't care about them winning. I don't want Dallas winning anything. But at the end of the day, if we don't win, we'll be no worse than fourth. And even at 4, you're still in position to make a move to go get Caleb Williams. So whether it's him or Drake May, you're still in a position to go up, because Arizona is going to be open for business more likely than not, because they're not going to take, a quarterback at 2. And if Marvin Harrison goes back to school, it probably becomes a no-brainer at that point, because you can still get the top tackle in the draft by trading back to 4 with whomever's at 4, whether it's us or New England. If Marvin Harrison Jr. is the guy you're after, he'll probably still be there at 4. So will the top 2 tackles in the draft. So you're not losing anything by moving back 2-3 spots if you're Arizona, and you'll still get the guy that you wanted all along, right? Because 1, 3, and 4, if things stay the way that they are right now, all are drafting quarterbacks. Chicago, if they stay there, they're drafting a quarterback. If Chicago isn't staying there, somebody's coming up there, they're taking a quarterback. Washington and New England are both taking quarterbacks. So Arizona's still going to end up with either the top receiver or the top tackle, if that's what they so choose to do. So as long as they don't go much further back than that, they're going to be fine. So there'll be plenty of time for that conversation. I got a lot to say on that too. So eventually we'll get there. Door Gunner, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB, who writes, Sierra ruined that man. Simp Lord is down hard. Our incompetence paid off keeping Russ and Deshaun out of DC. Yeah, you're right, because we would have been going after those two heavy. And remember, Russ is from Richmond, so probably grew up a Redskins fan, more likely than not, with his dad. But we're so down bad right now. He wanted nothing to do with us, and rightfully so. And Deshaun definitely wanted nothing to do with us, and we didn't want anything to do with him. At that time, we were like, hey, man, you gotta think about it, right? But we knew better than we couldn't afford to do anything with Deshaun Watson. But like you said, our incompetence paid off, because had we been a well-run organization and not been one of the worst-run organizations in all of sports, those guys would have been, at the top of the list, and they might have been willing to come to DC, and we couldn't afford another one of those type of disasters here in Washington. We're still talking about Albert Hainsworth here in Washington. We couldn't afford, even though Josh Norman wasn't as bad and it wasn't as much money, that one didn't work out the way that we had hoped, and we couldn't afford one at the highest levels of this thing. Quarterback, it can't get much worse than that, and it's been really bad. Sierra didn't ruin that man, but he ain't been the same since he got her goodies, right? You teed it up for me. I had to do it, man. You teed it up for me. But no, seriously. He just, for whatever reason, man, he just hasn't been the same. I just think he is a guy that has to be in a certain type of offense. And what they were doing in Denver just doesn't fit his skill set. And I think if you put him in an offense where a coordinator kind of bends his philosophy and builds an offense around Russ's talents, I think you can get more out of him than what they've gotten out of him the last 2 years in Denver. I just don't think it was a good fit. And he got big-headed too, clearly. How he was running the show in Denver that first year was crazy. We heard the stories about all the things he was doing and guys he was bringing into the building. And yeah, it was a nasty situation. I think he got humbled after last year, but him and Peyton just don't mix. I never thought that would work. I always said, man, I don't know if this. I told y'all in the offseason when Peyton got the job, I was like, I don't think Russ is his type of quarterback. And you're seeing that right now. So anyway, I digress. Let's get to the comment section and knock out a few comments, and then we will get to the end of the show and garbage time and all of that good stuff. John Wynn says, I don't understand why Russell Wilson is forced to be benched. Can you explain that? Already did explain why he's being benched. Derek B writes, the last 2 games from Terry show that he blames Sam for his lost season, not EB. Terry quit on Sam long ago. Brissett has been a defibrillator to his game. We'll see how that goes this week. I've been asking to see Jacoby start a game to see if he gets the same kind of energy when we're not down 3 touchdowns and the other team defensively is like, hey, you can have all the underneath shit you want. Just don't throw it over our heads. Now, the Rams game was a little weird because they've been playing that soft, too high shell the entire game. And then soon as Jacoby comes in, they remove the too high shell, go single high, and give Terry one-on-one. And they were able to take advantage of it twice. So we'll see. But I don't know who's to blame. I don't know who Terry is blaming or isn't blaming. Whatever the case may be, I know who I blame. That's what's important to me. I know who I blame. I can't speak for anybody else. Cam G writes, did you hear about the Jair Alexander suspension? This means we were robbed of the rematch between him and Justin Jefferson. Yeah, so apparently this clown went out for the coin toss against Carolina and he wasn't supposed to. And then he posted it on IG after the game, right? As if it was almost like he got a dare and somebody was like, yo, I didn't see it because they don't show the coin toss here. I dared you to go out there. You got to prove it. Post it on IG. And so after the game, he posted him at the coin toss and the coach was like, bro, I didn't tell you to take your ass out there for the coin toss. The hell are you doing? All right, bet. I got you. Go sit your ass down. You suspended for this game. Tis. They got a lot of shit going on out there. I told you, when you got a bunch of young boys and no established veterans in the locker room, these are the types of antics that can happen. As a fan of a team in Memphis with that had no veteran leadership, all young boys, it was the blind leading the blind, and you saw what happened. You got one of your guys talking shit to one of the greatest players in NBA history, and then going absolutely AWOL in that series. You got, another dude out here getting in trouble, and he's literally was being turned into the face of the league, and he can't, help himself on IG Live. What did the organization do? They went out and got some veterans to help babysit the rest of the roster, to help them mature and grow up, right? That's what it is in Green Bay right now. It's the blind leading the blind. It's a bunch of young guys out there. They don't have any veterans on that team. Like Preston Smith might be the oldest dude on that roster. That's crazy, right? Because Preston Smith is only on his 2nd deal, I think, if I'm not mistaken. So, yeah, it's the blind leading the blind. I did hear about that, and that's a crazy situation. I've never heard anything like that, but and there may be more to that too. That might not be the first time he's done some shit, and that might have been the last straw, and they felt like they needed to kind of curtail that right now. But anyway, I digress. Pervy Sage 4348, been a member for 2 months, writes, sad how this coaching staff ruined Sam. I couldn't agree with you more. It's a sad state of affairs, but you know what? It is what it is, and that's what happened, and we just got to continue to move forward. And, I can lament it all I want, but Sam needed to play better too. It's not just on this staff. He needed to play better, and he didn't. And they didn't do him any favors. He was going to have to overcome all of the obstacles and circumstances that were going to befall in him in this situation to be successful. And it was just too much for him. And really any young quarterback, it was going to be too much for him to overcome. I mean, the amount of stuff he was going to have to overcome was surmountable. And that's ultimately how it played itself out. John Wynn says, I hope you have an amazing Christmas and New Year with your fam. Happy 2024 New Year. Likewise, John. Likewise. I appreciate that. If Russell Wilson does deserve to be cut from Denver, where is he going to go? Because it's not like I don't want to give Russell another chance to play with the Seahawks again. There are going to be plenty of teams this offseason that are looking for a quarterback. And there'll be, like I was talking to my buddy, I know he doesn't want any parts of this, but he's a Raiders fan. And he was like, we're not going to be in a position to draft a quarterback. And we're in a win now situation. Like, we're not looking to turn our roster over. Like, we know the Jets are going to come after Devontae Adams aggressively this offseason, and the Raiders will be in a position. If they were rebuilding, you trade him, right? But they're not. That's a bona fide, legit number one wide receiver, and you're not looking to get rid of that guy if you're the Raiders because you're trying to win, and they need a veteran quarterback. Russell Wilson may fit that bill for them. I don't know if they see him as a guy that would make their team any better, but we'll see. They still got Jimmy Garoppolo on that roster. I don't know how much money he's making. I don't know if they can get out of that contract, but there'll be some teams, trust me, that are looking for a quarterback. The question is there any team out there that's going to make any guarantees to Russ? They may say, hey, you can come in and compete, but us just giving will he be able to put his ego aside and say, nah, I'm willing to come in and compete? We'll see. I'm pretty sure there'll be at least one team out there, that needs a veteran quarterback that thinks they're not that far away from winning, and adding a guy like Russell Wilson, even though he hasn't played, extremely well, adding a guy like Russell Wilson gives them a chance to be somewhat competitive. So we'll see what happens. Nick writes, can a new coaching staff, i.e. Ben Johnson, bring back Howell's form from earlier in the season? It's possible, but you got to understand that had we been 9th in the draft, that's a realistic conversation to have, right? Even with what we've seen of late, even with the benching, if you're drafting 9th and you don't love Bo Nix, you don't love Michael Penix Jr., you don't love the kid from Michigan, you don't love any of these other quarterbacks, right? The kid Spencer Rattler from South Carolina, you don't love any of these other quarterbacks. You just wanted one of the top 3. And at 9, you're in no position to get any of those guys. And none of the teams up there are willing to trade, a pick away to allow you to get up there to get one. And you're kind of stuck. Then that conversation would come into play. We're literally 3rd in the draft, and we will have an opportunity to get our hands on one of the top 3 passers in this year's draft class. Whether you love them or not, they'll be all available, with the exception of probably Caleb Williams. They'll be available to Washington, whether it's a trade up to 2 with Arizona to ensure that you get the second best quarterback in the draft, or maybe this guy's at the top of your board. Maybe Drake May's at the top of Washington's board. Who knows? At the end of the day, being that we're so high in the draft, I don't think this is a conversation that we can even have anymore. This was a conversation we might have been able to have 5 weeks ago. But after the way Sam has played and how he's forced the hand of this organization now, like, it's no way you can go back. It's no way you can go back. You can't put this toothpaste back in the tube. It's over, and it's a shame, because I do think a better staff, a better coaching opportunity here, and a better philosophical approach would benefit Sam and do light years and do wonders, rather, for his career trajectory. But it's too late for that now. It's too late for that, unfortunately. So, Kevin writes, hey, Lou, wanted to hear your thoughts on my Packers suspending Jair. It feels like a crazy situation at a dire time, but I feel like it was pretty deserved. Players can't just do whatever. Yeah, and we talked about that already. It was pretty weird. I've never seen anything quite like that before. But like you said, you got to send a message because it's a young team. So like I said, when you got a young team, you got to send a message to the rest of the squad. Like, you can't be just out here doing shit. You can't just do what you want to do and expect no consequences. This wasn't, and again, I don't know if Jair, because he's always been an outspoken guy. And so I don't know if there have been issues in the past with him and this was the last straw and they felt like they needed to, do something, or if they just felt like this was so disrespectful on so many levels and we got a young team and we got to set precedents here and let everybody else know in the locker room. We don't care how good of a player you are. He's one of the best players on the team. We don't give a shit how good you are. You're going to abide by the rules. Simple as that. That's what this felt like. We got to send a message to the rest of the team that this is unacceptable. And if you can't fall in line, then this could happen to you. So, and imagine what will happen to you if you're not playing at the level of a Jair Alexander. You try some shit like this and you're a 5th round pick, your ass is gone. So just had to set the tone for these dudes and let them know we're not going for it. That's what it kind of felt like. Rosario Satara Poleski, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for the thank you for being a member of the MOBB. Who writes, launched channel to promote my book called Let's Save Cinema Productions. Released my first video to promote the channel, promote the cinema textbook. Hey, we'll leave that link down in the description, man, so we can follow you and support you, man. Drop that link in the comment section. If I see the link, I will put it up on the screen so people can click on that link and sub up to your channel and support the movement, man. You've been a huge supporter here for a number of years. And if anything I can do to reciprocate that energy, I want to do so. So if you've got the link to your channel, please, by all means, drop it in the comment section and we'll try to support your movement, man. I'm proud of the moves that you're making and your continued growth. So we want to try to help further that along, man. Really do appreciate you as always. Sindeko. Right. Finally, Bryce Young shows us something #1 overall pick worthy. He still needs a lot of work, but there were 3 or 4 passes yesterday that wowed me. The rest were still wobbling ducks. I'm telling you, the dude can play. All right. It's been a rough go of it for him. It has not been easy. And here's what I worry about the most. There's just too much change in Carolina. There's too much turmoil. There's too much shit going on around him. They got to focus in on what's important, and that's his development. Surrounding him with talented players, getting him an offensive line that can actually protect him. We know he's short. They knew that when they drafted him. So you have to fortify, in particular, guard to guard. We can't have, Bozeman and all kinds of retreads and young guys that aren't any good inside. You got to have your best offensive lineman be guard to guard, right? The tackles are cool. You need them too. But just like in New Orleans with Drew Brees, they always spent their most resources on the guard and center positions because that's where short quarterbacks live. They have to be able to step up in the pocket. You're going to have to take care of him. You're going to have to get him some weapons. This guy can play. He didn't get here on accident, man. I'm glad he showed you a little something. Y'all scored 30 points. I didn't see it coming. Flat out. Didn't see it coming. Almost beat those boys. See, we'll take 1 or 2 more and then we'll get out of here. Or we'll move on to our final segment. Rich writes, I'm the last standing. I still think Sam's fine. He went back to his junior year ways these few games. I'm not getting blinded by these games after I've seen him ball all the games before. Look, I didn't denounce Sam as a guy that can play in this league. You might still be outside. I went inside. I already see what it is. I see the writing on the wall. I've watched enough of these types of situations at the end of seasons with coaches who know they're getting fired to know better that there's nothing that can come of this situation for Sam in a positive manner. What's happened has happened, and I wish it didn't go down the way that it did, but I know he can play. Like, those of us who watched him play at Carolina, those of us who watched him this year, we saw the talent, we saw the flashes. I don't pay attention to those who were always blinded by what was coming down the pipeline at the quarterback position and didn't want anything to do with Sam and was looking for a reason to say he sucks, right? I was never focused on that crowd. I was always focused on what Sam was actually doing. And he put tangible proof on film that he can do it at this level, right? you just needed a better situation for him. You know, we needed a coach that wasn't going to literally put every week. We went into the game putting the game on Sam's shoulders offensively. How is that fair to a quarterback that came into the season with one career start under his belt? I mean, that makes absolute, and it's a little different. Jordan Love had the same exact thing done to him this year, but it's a little different in the sense that A, they did try to run the ball in Green Bay, but B, most importantly, he was in the same system his entire career. So it's not like he had to learn different systems every single year and that, you know, all of this was foreign to him. He had already been in this system under Matt LaFleur for, 3-4 years now. Sam was going into his second system in as many years in the NFL, and they needed to coddle him. They needed to use the run game. They needed to use play action fake. They needed to use the quick game. They needed to use screens and misdirection. They needed to do some trickeration. They needed to use him as a runner. They did none of these things on a consistent basis, most of them at all. And every week they went into the game saying, Sam, you got to go out and win us the game. The defense is trash. We got to score 30 plus, and you're going to be the one to do it. And if you can't do it, we're going to lose. Are you okay with that? And he's a puppy. What is he going to say? No. He's going to go out there and try to get it done. And unfortunately, he wasn't able to do it. A little disappointed in how it ended. Really disappointed in how he's played of late. But this is what happens when, it all comes crashing down. Like literally on some Kanye West shit, it all falls down and literally all fell down on Sam at the end here. And that was really disappointing to see, but what can you do? Syndeco, writes, Lou, letting Ron finish out his tenure is the right move. We are still paying for how we let him go. It's bad karma disrespecting a respectable coach. Sad goes out to the same way again. Yeah, we did the right thing. Emotionally, as a fan, I wish we would have fired him. Honestly, after seeing what he's done to Sam at the end here, he wants to go out in a respectable manner, but you didn't send the quarterback out in a respectable manner. That's trash. But at the end of the day, we did the right thing. Our owner did the right thing. Karma is a real thing. And, for all the shit that Ron didn't do right here, at a time when we needed someone to stabilize the football team, he did that. He provided us a face that we could roll out to the masses and say, hey, look, we're not the villains. We're not as bad as you paint us to be. It's just our owner. Everybody else here are actually good people. It's just the owner. And Ron's face was the one that we chose to roll out in front of everybody to get that message across. So, again, I'm disappointed with how this has ended. I can't wait for him to go. But, the right thing was to probably let him finish out his tenure. But because I ride for Sam, I'm caping for Sam. I'd be lying to you if I told you I wasn't pissed off at how this is all gone. And I would have preferred him to be fired. Having seen how this is all played out and how he's botched this thing even worse than I thought was even humanly possible. No, I would have preferred to have seen him fired. But the right thing to do, taking my my fandom and my emotions out of the situation. No, them holding on to him is absolutely the right thing to do. Me being a fan and me caping for Sam says, nah, get rid of his ass. We should have fired him after the Thanksgiving game. But I digress. Let's go ahead and move on to our final segment. And of course, that is garbage time. So I wanted to talk about this real quick. Things have gotten complicated just a little bit after week 16. So with the 49ers losing to the Ravens have established themselves as one of the premier teams in the league. We already knew that. And they set up a big matchup between them and the Dolphins. That'll be for the number 1 seed out west in the AFC. So that's a big game in week number 17. But the drubbing that the 49ers took, it wasn't just the loss because it was the two best teams in the league and in each respective conference. So we expected that it could go either way. With the 49ers playing how they had been playing, we didn't expect it to be as thorough an ass whooping as it ended up being in favor of the Ravens, especially in San Francisco, where they had just been lights out over the last 3-4 years, it felt like. But whatever the case may be, the 4 interceptions thrown by Brock Purdy quiets that whole MVP conversation, which is crazy because he's been extraordinary this year. But, you know, now the people like Cam Newton, who called him a game manager, are like, see. And then you throw Lamar Jackson in, and now there's this crowd that I felt like has just come out of nowhere. Nobody was clamoring for Lamar to be the league MVP before this performance against the 49ers. All of a sudden, now Lamar has to be the MVP. And I'm like, did you forget about Christian McCaffrey? Like, the question was, which one of these 49ers is going to win the MVP trophy? Not somebody outside of that group. McCaffrey is still playing at a high level. He scored another touchdown in that game against the Ravens. He played well again. And how did Lamar Jackson just somehow overtake him? His numbers are good. They're not even close to the 2019, or was it 19, I believe, 2019 MVP season. He's not even close to that season. Like, what are we talking about? I mean, his numbers are good this year. They're not great. Still should be McCaffrey, but shit's got complicated now. They just beat the 49ers in their building, and Lamar had a really good game, so Lamar's got to be the MVP now. That's crazy to me. The Lions they're back now, and then, you know, family business got a little tight there at the end against Minnesota, but they pulled it out. They clinched the division, but it's not over for them. They got a chance to get to the number 1 seed here, right? If the 49ers slip up again, right, they beat Dallas, they got a chance. We'll see what happens with Philadelphia, but right now the Lions are right there in a position to not only, you know, be the number 2 seed in the NFC, but potentially be the number 1 seed, right? Shit's got complicated. Buffalo just dodged a bullet, almost losing to the Chargers, but pulling that thing out like they were supposed to. But a lot of teams had an opportunity to distance themselves from the back end of the AFC, you know, in the hunt teams, and they didn't. Tomlin doing Tomlin-like things again. You know, just when you're ready to count them out, 3 straight losses, 2 of them coming against inferior opponents, looking like they're lifeless at this point. He inserts Mason Rudolph, and wouldn't you know it, they score, you know, the most points they've scored all season, win convincingly. Mason Rudolph, most yards and 2 touchdowns with no interceptions in a game by a Steelers quarterback since Ben Roethlisberger retired. Of course, go figure, it'd be Mason Rudolph in this situation, right? And so now the Steelers are right back in the mix. So are the Raiders. What about Christmas Day and the Raiders going into Arrowhead and defeating the Kansas City Chiefs? They had lost 7 straight games to the Kansas City Chiefs. And we got to talk more about the Raiders. We got to talk more about Antonio Pierce. I'd like to do that maybe on the next podcast episode. But that was as impressive a victory as I've seen all season by a team, because they went into that game with a clear mindset and a way that they were going to go about executing, beating them, and they went out and executed it to a T. I want to talk about Antonio Pierce and what he's done in Vegas, and I hope we get a chance to do that later on this week. But that's as impressive a victory as I've seen this season by a team. And I'll take it a step further. Now the Raiders are back in the mix. Things just got complicated. They're 7-8, I know. But you look at their remaining schedule, and I think Cleveland and whoever doesn't win the AFC East is locking up a playoff spot, right? So those 2 wild cards are spoken for. But that 7th wild card, 7th and final spot in the AFC, that 3rd wild card, rather, that 7th seed, that final spot, that shit's up for grabs in the AFC. And the Raiders aren't out of this thing. And they got Indy. That's a team in front of them right now. They can beat them. And if they do beat them, they've got Denver in week 18 at home, do the Raiders. They can win that game too. And if you look up at the Texans and their struggles of late, and you look up at the Indianapolis Colts, and they just got beat by Atlanta, and if they lose to Vegas next week, they're going in the wrong direction. You look at Cincinnati, they've been holding on for dear life. They get their doors blown off. I think they're going to start struggling here. Everybody's coming back to earth. The Broncos pretty much played themselves out of any contention with that loss last week to New England. They're done. The Raiders are right there. Shit just got complicated. And then, of course, I just talked about it. The Broncos losing to the New England Patriots at home really complicated matters. Obviously, we saw the fallout from that. Russell Wilson getting benched. Things just got complicated, man. Okay? In the NFC, I think the picture's starting to clear up a bit, right? I've said this already. I'm going to reiterate it. Titans are the Seahawks found a way to win, beat the Titans. Wasn't pretty, but it was gritty. Most importantly, it was a dubski. They're nearing a playoff berth, continuing to find ways to get it done. The Rams are continuing to play good football. We saw them take care of the Saints on Thursday Night Football. I think you're going to get 3 teams from that division in, right? And then the last wild card spot, I think, is going to be in that. And look, Tampa Bay made a statement against Jacksonville. So that's something to keep an eye on. Jacksonville's sputtering right now. I'd like to talk more about their situation. I'd like to talk more about Tampa Bay. I mean, that was a statement when they're talking about finding a way to get to a deal with Baker Mayfield. They got to be careful there. We've seen Baker do this before, and then the next year, Baker, goes and turns back into a pumpkin. But we'll see, because he's playing really well right now. They're playing confident football, and they look like the cream of the crop of that NFC South division. But don't sleep on Atlanta now with Taylor Heineke. We know he's capable of winning ball games. That 7 seed in the NFC has gotten interesting. It's complicated as well all of a sudden. So with Minnesota losing and things transpiring the way that they have, look out, man. These final 2 weeks are setting up to be really, really exciting ball. We'll come back. We'll talk about a lot of these things later on in the week. But in any event, that's going to do it for me, your man, Louie T, here on this installment of the Louie T Network podcast. I thank you guys for joining me. I look forward to chopping it up with you. I got one more super chat we'll take on the way out. Rosario Satara Poleski, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Double up. Thank you for doubling up. Who writes, been a tough year. Hope we get a great new coach. It has been a tough year as a fan of this team. But you know what? And I hope we not only get a great coach, I hope we get a even better GM. That, to me, is where it all starts. And if you get that one right, I think everything else will kind of fall into place. Obviously, you need the right coach, though. But if you got the right GM picking the players, you're going to have a shot. You're going to have a shot. Anyway, I digress. That's going to do it for me, your man, Louie T, here on the 384th installment of the Louie T Network podcast. Until next time, you guys take care. God bless. Good night.